And then the hair.
When they show them pictures, I like that.
Okay, first. Okay, here's what I want to do today. Okay. Today, I want to talk about negative, zero exponents, mix it all together today. I want to talk about scientific notation, and that's where we're going to leave off, and I'll give you some homework on that. I'm not going to do the whole review of those things we did yesterday with like the product rule, the power rule, the power of power, because we've already done that for 2 days. Today is about the new ones. So let's start with kind of something that's more in depth. 4x squared, y to the negative third, 5x, z to the negative fourth, and a w. Okay, throwing in the deep end right away. Here we go. So we have multiple letters. We have multiple negative signs going on. Order of operations tells me I should do the parentheses first, then get the inside parenthesis done, and then distribute the negatives, the negative 3 through for exponents. Technically, on this case, since I'm not adding or multiplying like things together, it really doesn't matter if I distribute the negative 3 first, or if you want to move some stuff around in here, then distribute the negative power. It doesn't make a difference to me, because I've seen it done 2 different ways. They always work out the same as long as you know how to cancel things out and simplify. So I'm going to give you guys the option. Do you guys want to do the inside first, or do you want to distribute the power first?
Distribute the power.
Distribute the power. We're going to go with that. It doesn't matter. You could do either way as long as you know how to simplify it correctly. So let's do this first part. So I'm going to distribute the power. So that negative 3 goes into everything. And when you do this, this is still the power of power rule. It will still multiply on everything that you see here. Every power is going to get a negative 3. So, for instance, this 4 on the top gets a negative 3. The x gets a negative 3, so that turns out to be negative 6. This y gets a negative 3, that turns out to be 9. You are still multiplying those together. On the bottom, 5 gets a negative 3. X gets a negative 3. The z gets a negative 3, making that a 12, because it's negative 4 times negative 3. And the w gets a negative 3. Now, the reason why I agreed with what you guys said, other one, because it doesn't really matter the order that you're doing. I like to distribute the power first. That's just a pet peeve of mine. The reason being is that if you're gonna do everything inside the parentheses first and move stuff around and cancel, and then you're gonna distribute the negative power, what's gonna happen again? You're gonna move things right back to where they were. That's why I wait to move stuff after I get the power through the parentheses. It doesn't matter. You will eventually get the right answer. It's just how much work do you want to put through it. Okay? Alright, I'm going to move stuff here first before I start to cancel things. I'm not going to start crossing x's out because I see 3 and 6. I'm going to move them all to the same spot because you can't cancel things until the powers are all positives. Because if you start crossing out, oh, this one has 3 and this one has 6, like, you might make a mistake. Most people won't, but you could potentially make mistakes. So move things around first. So for instance, when I do this problem, I would move the 5 and 4 first. So this 5 goes to the top, the 4 goes to the bottom. Notice when you move them, the powers turn out to be positive now, because they've moved. The x to the 6, x to the third, those are switching spots. The y to the 9th stays in the top. The z on the bottom stays where it's at. And that w goes to the top, and that is a w to the third. Okay, questions with how I move things around. Anything with a negative power is moving. Now what I want to do is simplify. So it's like a 2 to 3 step problem. Okay, but I'm going to slow down. Sorry, I'm going kind of fast. Is there questions with any of the rules I've done up to this point? Like negative rule or the power rule where I'm multiplying? So far this should be somewhat straightforward, I think, right? I'm just kind of moving. This is the part, just double check my math. 5 to the third power, that's 125, correct? I think I did that one yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 125. 4 to the third, I believe, is 64. I think we had that one yesterday as well. X's, these are going to cancel. So I'm gonna take away 3 from the top, 3 from the bottom, leaving 3 on the bottom, because that's where most of the x's are found anyway. The y, the w's are staying on the top, they're not canceling anywhere, and that z is staying on the bottom. And there's your final answer. I don't care if you put them in alphabetical order, I'm not that particular. Questions, comments?
Can't you simplify the 125 to 64?
If they have something in common, I'm pretty sure that 64 and 125 don't. If it could, because 125 is made just of 5s, and 64 is just made of 2s, basically 4s and 2s. I don't think they'll have anything in common. If you could, you're absolutely right. So like, if you need to double check that these have anything in common still, you need to do that last. Like that's the last thing I would do. Start canceling those out and stuff like that. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. If they have anything in common. Okay, questions at all about that problem? Okay, I would expect that's probably one of the more difficult problems you'll see today. Something like that. Just because of I'm not trying to like throw like the biggest problems at you. I just want to see, do you know the basics? Like the problems are pretty straightforward. It's just one of those things like the order you go in doesn't make the difference on this problem. It's just how much work are you willing to put in. I would expect if you had this problem, I would want to see some work written down. Because no one's going to be able to do that all in their head at one time. You'll mess something up, you'll forget a negative power. All right, questions at all about that?
Can we kill the cricket?
I don't know.
It's outside, so no.
Bro, I'll go get him. Okay.
Ask Jade, she'd want to locker.
Oh, that was a grasshopper. Don't be crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Did you get it out? Because that's hilarious. Yes. And the worst part, I hope it has
The worst
grasshopper
part is
babies
it caused
all
her to be her late, so now she owes me 15 minutes of attention.
Can I like serve that in the morning?
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Just
told.
Okay,
That is hilarious.
all right, let's go to one more here. I want one more before we get to the scientific notation stuff. This is just a little thing I want to double check.
You couldn't ask for a better outcome than that.
No, I got a password.
Unless it has grasshopper babies in there. That would be
Dude, I
better.
should just stick.
All right, this is one of the last problems before we do the scientific notation stuff. Okay, I'm not trying to pick one that's super difficult. I just want to talk about one stupid rule here. All right. So the problem I have here, we're going to have to distribute. You do see that there is a parenthesis there. I want to distribute the power of 2 into the parenthesis. It's just one of those things that I always do first. The only thing getting the -2 here is these 2 items. So it'll be the power of power rule. This stuff down here will stay except for the z. I guess that's moving. Now, what can you tell me about this -6? Say it again? You have to multiply it, right? Not distribute, but multiply it on that,
You
right?
make that.
Now, here's my question. Is the -6 going to move to the bottom?
No.
No. The -6 here does not go to the bottom. It doesn't have a negative power. It's just a negative number. There's a difference there. I've definitely seen in years past, somebody's going too fast, they move the 6 to the bottom, they're like, oh, it's negative, move it. That's not how it works. It's when negative powers, that's when you move things. It's just one of those little pet peeves. Okay, so, going through the math here, we have a -6. We're going to multiply that on the parenthesis here. I'm going to distribute the -2. So I have x to the -6, y to the -8. That's on the top. Oh, we'll move those here in a minute. On the bottom, these are just kind of staying for right now. And now I'm going to start to move stuff. Terrible 3. Questions with the first steps? Okay, let's move some stuff around. What are the items that are moving here? X. What else? Y and
Z.
a Z. These 2 on the top, that Z, they're going to move spots. So here we go. So -6, we have that 10. The X and Y, the Z's going to the top.
Wait, why did you put a multiply on the top?
Oh.
Like, does that need to be there?
I'm sorry. I just put the dots there to separate them. Not a big deal. They're all the same. Sorry, I didn't realize it. So the z's going to the top. On the bottom, I'm moving all of those x's and y's. There was already an x and a y to the third on the bottom, but now we're joining the x to the 6 and that y to the 8th is going down. Now, I don't care where you put them for right now, but does everyone understand why those move to the bottom?
Yeah.
And now you can combine those, right? They're just being totaled in the back there. So the z, that z squared is still up there. There's 7 x's down here, and there is 11 y's. Now, for the number out front, the digit, the -6 and the negative and the 10, sorry. I'll just divide these by what they have in common. Probably a 2. They both have 2's in common. Like if you can't think of like the biggest common factor, just start with like basic primes. 2's, 3's, 5's. They both have 2's. Divide them both by 2, I get a -3 and a 5, and you're done. That's your final answer. Questions, comments about any of the problems we have so far?
He's going ham up there. I know, he's just rubbing them. He's looking for a cricket lady.
Stop it, make me laugh.
He's gonna make me laugh on camera. Oh no.
Okay, are we good so far? Alright, last problem I want to do. I did 2, I said I want to go through about 4 problems a day. The 2 last problems I want to do are scientific notation problems. Do we understand how to change numbers into scientific notation? And do we know how to use it? That's what I want to check. Okay?
That goes up to the
Questions? Are we good so far?
Oh shoot.
So far, I mean, I know I threw in the deep end with some of these problems. I'm hoping that it's bringing back something that's familiar to you. Trust me, the problems I'm putting on the board are significantly harder than anything I have in the homework right now. I'm just trying to overly skill this right now. So if you think it's easy, you're more than fine. So, all right, here we go. Last two problems before we get to homework. All right. Okay.
It's all in camera.
Next problem. I only got this one and one other, and then we're done.
It's all in camera.
Wow. No, I have to. Camera only records for like 24, 25 minutes because the way that it can store on the memory card. So I just stopped it now, fast restart it, and just put it all together when I post it.
That was my hand.
Oh.
Kind of picky. I wish I had a camera that would record like 60 minutes, so I wouldn't have to worry about that.
I cannot see.
Dude, we gotta get you a better camera.
I'm trying to look.
Oh,
I just want to get a GoPro. That way I can just start with a button.
Yeah. Tell how you do it. Shell out.
They won't do that.
When's your birthday?
Ow.
When's the birthday, Ward?
December.
December.
Alright, you'll have one by December.
December.
So,
We're cool.
all right. Hey, real quick. When they do these problems, what they want you to do is get practice changing numbers into scientific notation, and then multiply these. Now, obviously, we can use calculators. I know a calculator can just multiply these really quick, and you can get that answer. That's not what I want you to do. I know I could just type that in a calculator just as easy. But they want you getting used to like that concept of like changing numbers to scientific, and then the shortcuts for how you can multiply, right? So when I do this problem, the first thing I do is move the decimals that are on these numbers out front. They have to go behind the first number on the left, the farthest left. So this turns out to be 1.56 times 10, and now how many spots did I move that decimal? 4 spots. Okay, so there's that number in scientific notation. That's proper scientific notation where it's behind the first number on the left.
I could do this.
Okay, the next one. Moving this number up, that's 2.3 times 10 to the third, right? Because I moved it 3 spots. Okay, so now, why we did this is because when you multiply really big numbers,
One off it on the calculator.
yeah, you don't need to, number one, you don't need to type out the entire full number if there's a lot of zeros. You can just multiply the numbers out front, like those. Now, some people can just do that, like the numbers are relatively small, like 1.5 and the number 2. Some people can just do that in their head. But whatever these numbers are, you're going to multiply these two together So you're gonna take 1.56 times 2.3, and then in the back, we're just gonna put the 10 to the 4th and 10 to the 3rd. And that will finish out the scientific notation numbers. So in the back, technically, I have 10 to the 7th back here. Right, because there's 7 10s back there. But in the front, I'm taking 1.56 times 2.3. Okay, now, here's the part. I know that I said I don't want you using calculators. I'm totally fine if you just want to type this in really quick to give me what that decimal is. If you have a calculator, type it in. What do we get? Say it again.
3.58.
Okay, done. Move on to the next problem. My answer, my final answer is in scientific notation. If you ever have to change that answer, like get the decimal out the front, just add another power to it. So, because maybe it's like 35.88. Well, just move the decimal up front, add another power. Okay, questions. I'm betting on the numbers that you're going to have. The numbers will be relatively simple. You just multiply in your head. Question.
How did you move the decimals again?
Okay, so the decimal's in the back, right? And then what you do is you count how many spots did I move it so that it's behind the first number on the left side. So I'm moving it all the way to the front no matter what. So that I counted up, I moved it 4 spots.
Not in front of the first.
And on this one, I
number.
moved it 3 spots, so it's behind the first number on the left. So it's 10 to the 3rd. Got it? Okay, that's a good question. We gotta figure these out. Okay, any other questions we have? That was good though.
That was a great question.
Okay, all right, last one here. Here we go. Last problem that I'd like you to write down. Let's go with,
Recap.
let's go with 26 million,
We do that today too.
and we're gonna divide by, let's go 20,000.
Yeah. You get it ready to look out.
So we're dividing by 20,000. This is my last problem. They want you to first write these numbers in scientific notation, then divide them. Now, if there was anything weird on the top, maybe you need to like multiply those numbers together to get what that digit is. I want to get to a point where I have my number over a number. That's what I want. Once we're here, changing to scientific notation is just like what we did over here. Moving the decimal, putting 10s on it. So, let's walk through this. What will the top number be if I move the decimal?
1, 2,
2.6.
3, 4,
2.6
6, 7.
times 10 to the 7th power, moved it 7. It's 3 and, so 3, that's 6 and 7. On the bottom, 2.0, I'll just say 2, times 10 to the 4th, because we moved it over 4. And now the last step here is you just divide. The powers of 10 subtract each other. It's like cancellations. So, on the actual, like, on the 10s here, just subtract. What's 7 and 4 if I take away 4?
3.
3, so we're left with 10 to the 3rd. The number up front, you just divide these. I think you can divide 2.6 by 2.
1.3.
1.3, right? You just divide each number by 2 separately. It's 1.3, that's your answer. You move on to the next one. Like, dividing really big numbers in your head is actually easy if you change it to scientific notation.
Right.
So, the real answer here is I would actually have to move my decimal back 3 spots.
1,300.
It's 1,300. Like, that's the real answer that a calculator would tell you, but we can do it, pretty quickly, by hand if you just change the scientific notation.
We'll just run into the door.
Now, I don't mind if this power turns out to be negative. What I mean by negative, the top power is smaller than the bottom. This can be a negative power because you just take top minus the bottom. And that just means the decimal needs to go back the other direction. Because that can happen. The bottom number could be bigger, so you're going to get a decimal. But it's always top minus bottom. Questions? Okay, homework's on the board. Page 28. You have plenty of time today. I gave you about 20-some minutes so you can work today. It's due on Tuesday when we're back. So you have 4 days you can work on it. I will send an email Monday, because I know we don't have school Monday. I will send out an email Monday morning anyways, warning you that we have homework due tomorrow. So I recommend that you take your books home, or your online version, because again, you have the access to the online version. But we don't have school Monday.
Trevor's moving big head.
I gotta edit that out.
Allison, I will rip your eyebrows right off your face.
A little white.
You're gonna need a heck of a grip.
I know. Okay, any other questions, ma'am?
Or can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah.